Hello and welcome back to the Bridge Coffee Roasters podcast. My name is Jack, and in today's episode we are speaking to Stewart Johnson, who is UK Sales Director at Sanremo Espresso Machines. I've known Stuart for about the last year or so, but Bridge and Sanremo have been working together for about 2 decades. So it's great to sort of dive into the history and background relationship that the two companies have there. In this conversation, we heard from Stuart about his background as a classically trained French chef, a little bit about his time in the coffee industry and his methodology as a salesperson. We also heard about the history of Sanremo as an espresso machine manufacturer that started out in Italy, and how they sort of redefined their business and took it onto a new path with a new product around a decade ago. And then we also talked a little bit about the ideas and concepts behind some of Sanremo's new products. They've recently brought a new grinder and espresso machine into market. So we talked a little bit about the ideas behind those. And then finally, we hinted at a few things that might be coming down the pipeline for Sanremo in the near future as well. If you're listening to this episode, then just to make you aware, you can also watch the full video over on our YouTube channel. There's no sponsorship breaks or adverts in this podcast, so all we ask is that if you do enjoy what you're listening to, you leave a rating or review, or if you're watching, then like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into our conversation with Stuart. So thank you for joining us.
No problem at all.
Tell us a little bit about who you are. Where did you come from?
Where did I come from? So, my name's Stewart Johnson. I head up Sanremo in the UK. Have done now for just over the past year or so. Been in the UK coffee industry for pushing on 20 years, say it quickly, which feels like a lifetime, but...
kind of is a lifetime.
It is a lifetime, but it feels equally like it's flown by. Yeah. I suppose originally, back in the day, my official qualification, I am a classically trained French chef. So
really?
That's where I started. So my love of sort of food and drink and hospitality and culinary all comes from quite an early age. I was one of those fortunate people that actually at secondary school knew what they wanted to do.
I never knew that. That's really
nice. And I went straight from GCSEs into culinary school in London for 3.5 years.
What's your favourite dish?
Wow.
Favourite dish? And anything with duck is normally my kind of go-to. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Me too. You know,
is a good thing. So I was really fortunate, and we kind of diverged completely. But I was really fortunate. I got offered a position out of college to go and do private dining for a bank on Fleet Street, and because it was the same clients, literally day in day out, 365 days a year, we changed menus and dishes every week.
Oh wow!
So unlike restaurants that hold, the menu for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, literally made 4 new dishes, main, starter, and dessert every week for 3.5 years.
Wow!
So good to do, and a lot of fun, and lots of different styles.
Probably quite hard work though, was it?
It was hard work. And I doubt the budgets are as lenient as they were back then. No. But that was good fun. But that kind of dragged me through into sort of everything coffee and operations. I ended up moving from the kitchen to the operations side, and then I got handed some coffee shops to run within a contract catering environment in central London as part of this at this bank, and then I literally fell in love with coffee from there. So again, sort of all things sort of culinary mixed into it, sort of being creative and everything else, and just kind of went from there. And then I got approached and sort of fell into the coffee industry in a big way. Did some work with a couple of different roasters and equipment manufacturers. Worked on some big national contracts through the years, both with roasters and equipment. And then COVID came along, shook the industry up completely.
Yep.
Turned it on its head.
Unreal. Values just wiped off the floor overnight. And then, did a bit of sort of consulting and freelancing through the sort of back into COVID, and then, found a new home at Sanremo just over a year ago now. So
very cool.
It's an interesting project.
Yeah.
So, a new take on a few angles that we're putting into place, and Sanremo in the UK is now only one of 2 branch offices globally of the Sanremo business. So between the UK and the US, we are the only 2 direct subsidiaries of the global business, which is nice. So it gives us a lot of support, control, and everything else when it comes to development with customers, both the marketing, R&D, new customers. So we've got a direct relationship that we can pull on everything from back in Italy, which is nice.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, give us a little background on Sanremo.
So Sanremo, okay. So Sanremo is actually, I'd probably say it's quite a young company in the world of espresso machines. So we're only just pushing on for 30 years old in its current format. So 30 years ago, the De Sordi family purchased the brand and really stepped into the world of coffee machines. That was 1997. And then for the next 10 years, kind of started to build up a range of espresso machines and getting a foothold on the market. And we're really kind of just everyone was doing a lot of the same. You know, it was lots of design, but it was a very similar technology across the entire range.
Yeah.
And Sanremo then took quite a brave step and thought, well, hang on a minute. If we could reimagine the espresso machine today to be the best it can be, what would that look like? And literally took in a team of baristas from around the globe that were well known for input into the coffee industry and everything from world championship baristas to operators to roasters and everything else to try and create the best possible espresso machine on the market. Not only looking at the requirements of the operations, but actually looking at what new materials can we use, what could we do if we completely rewrote the rule book, what would we do? And they came up with a machine called the Opera, and that was our new direction for Sanremo just over, it would have been 13 years ago that we launched the Opera. And that was our line in the sand to say, look, we can do this differently. And that machine, still today, I would challenge anyone out there to kind of compare it against any other machine in the market.
There's nothing else really like it, is it?
Yeah, its capabilities, its technology, even the online Wi-Fi and telemetry system that's running on it is, you know, we've been doing that for 12, 13 years now. So we've taken a lot of learnings from that. And that was the start point of us really focusing on in-cup quality and also the ability and the operational side of a barista being able to deliver volume. So it was kind of that balance between how do we create a machine that delivers the best possible consistency, the best quality, and optimizing those coffees the best we can, but at volume. Historically, it kind of been you'd had to trade one off against the other. Yeah. So we created a machine that could do that in the Opera, and that has then set the tone for pretty much us reimagining the entire range of machines over the last sort of 10 years. And that sort of culminates in our latest release, the D8, which we brought to the market in April of this year. So you can see a lot of the technology from the Opera that has come down through the program, and now we're now here to focus on how we help coffee shops and how we help our distributors and roasters and partners to really develop and deliver a traditional experience. It's not just about you can put a traditional machine on the counter and hope that works. And you know, I think a lot of people think you can buy a traditional machine, put it on the counter, and suddenly you've got a coffee shop, and you're going to grow and you're going to develop and be successful. It's not that simple, unfortunately. As much as I think a lot of people would like it to be, it's a lot of hard work. But I think at the same time, we've got a great opportunity to bring back coffee being that kind of hospitable social drug that we all love. So we're on a journey to deliver that.
So the Opera, that came out around 10 years ago.
Yep.
Did that have pressure profiling?
It did.
When it was launched?
It did indeed. So it's still...
Is that still a new thing?
It's still a new thing, and pressure profiling is a wonderful subject. And
a whole rabbit hole that we could go down.
A rabbit hole you could go down for days, and there is still no... You know, I couldn't sit here today and say, this is why you do this for this coffee.
No,
there is still a massive sort of unknown. And whenever I get into this subject, I end up sitting there with people going, I think we've got to kind of stop this and agree that we all need to learn more, and there's still a lot we don't know, which is fascinating. I think that's what keeps us all kind of engaged into this industry, is that every time we push on with something new, there's something we find again that we don't know about, and we can continue to sort of develop and learn. I got into a huge conversation not that long ago just around sort of filter baskets, flat bottomed, curved bottoms, holes, number of holes, and everything else. And you you get lost and you kind of go.
We're really getting.
That's it. And you got to go. Can't always dial it back and going, is this relevant?
Yeah.
And who to?
Yeah.
And you're probably into those sort of 0.5% gains in that specialty market.
Yeah.
So
it's top 1% market.
Exactly. So you've always got to look at these things. But at the same time, that also does help us to bring that technology down the range and make things better elsewhere. So there is relevance, but at the same time, we've got to be, why does that machine suit that purpose?
It sounded like the Opera was a bit of proof of concept.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of proof of concept, Halo sort of machine and style, and then you can sort of bring that tech down.
But what it also did, I think, as far as we're concerned, as like a reseller and like a roaster. I mean, we've been buying Sanremo machines.
I was going to ask,
since. Well, I started at Bridge in 2003, and we didn't sell traditional machines at all back then. It was all like we were an office coffee company back then, and we just sold bean to cup machines to offices. Like I wanted to get into Horeca. That was kind of like my baby, and I was tasked with finding a traditional machine manufacturer at the time, and I saw literally all the big names.
Yeah,
they all came to sort of did their pitch to us and brought a machine along. Right. Probably literally 5 or 6, no more than that, 7 or 8 of them probably at the time. Andrew Tucker came along.
Oh yeah,
with I think it was probably an Amalfi or a Capri. He would have brought back.
So possibly.
And we came down to the showroom. We saw the whole range, but the first thing was he literally brought a machine to see us, and it was one of the entry level machines. Yeah. But and back then, I think probably the real reason we started going with Sanremo back then was because we were at the same sort of part of the journey as he kind of was back then, in the sense that he was still pretty new in the UK. It didn't really, I don't know when it actually started in the UK, do you?
I'd have to check it, but...
it must be around that sort of time, early 2000s.
Early 2000s, definitely. I've got sort of 17-ish years in my head. So
okay.
It would have been the early 2000s.
Yeah, so we kind of knew that they were at the beginning of the journey. We kind of were, so that kind of fit together at that point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until the Opera came along that I kind of got what Sanremo were trying to do, if you know what I mean. It was there's no denying it. The traditional espresso machine is a crowded market, particularly when you look at the Italians.
Yeah,
the Italians are the best at it, and there's a whole load of different manufacturers you can choose from, and they'll all tell you why they're the best.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so I think it was a very brave move for Sanremo to actually kind of like try and cut into what it was essentially a saturated market, but they've absolutely done it. And I think it's that Opera has been the flagship, isn't it? Or
Absolutely. You can see some of the, and equally, some of the materials we've used on the Opera have never been used in the coffee industry before. Some of the ways we've stabilised things and certain pumps and the philosophy around how we heat water and manage the quality of the water inside the machine is completely different. And we've brought that down through the Café Racer, through the F18s, through the D8s, and a little bit into the Zoe.
Definitely,
even. And it's what we learn from those that we then bring through.
And we can see that. We can see that as a reseller, that like you've got that flagship, and you're never going to sell thousands of those machines, are you?
No.
It is at the top end of the market. It's not a cheap machine, fantastic machine, but like we can see that technology and that kind of mindset is now throughout the range.
Yeah. No, it's very much, and I say in-cup quality is a massive focus for us, and I think a lot of people forget that. It's about what delivers in the cup. If it looks amazing on the bench at the same time, fantastic. But actually, is that the number one priority to a successful business? And secondly, operationally, can I live and work with this machine? I think a lot of people forget that fact, and they can put all sorts of information and displays and clever levers and buttons and actually anything else. But one of the root things, like you talk about a screw or you talk about a device on any machine. People know that you go clockwise to tie and unclockwise, backwards and forwards. Right. It's something that people recognise really simply.
Yeah.
So actually, a steam arm that twists is something that people can pick up and learn really quickly. Hence why on our entry machines, where we know there's limited learning and capability, people all know that turning a steam arm is a simple thing.
Yeah.
They might see a lever, think, oh yeah, it's great, and a seasoned barista, quick activation, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's other people that walk up to that machine, brand new to hospitality, you kind of go, what does that do?
Yeah.
And that's been a really interesting discussion over the last few years, especially with the high turnover of staff in hospitality, how we've developed machines and what tech we have and haven't put on machines, and what information we are showing to baristas and not showing to baristas, and controlling it in different ways. That's been a really interesting journey over the last 12 months since I've joined the business, to kind of go, hang on a minute, we need to look at this, at what we're delivering as not just a machine, but almost like an operational solution for that right environment. Does a barista in a garden centre, for example, need to know the temperature of that group head, or is that something only the roaster really needs to know, or the supervisor?
Yeah.
So is that a relevant bit of information? Is it a relevant piece of technology that needs to be on that machine for the cost in that environment, and vice versa? There's a huge amount of work that we've done over the last year just to focus on kind of what is the right machine for the right environment. And we see people requiring different elements in different areas.
That's a really
fascinating.
It's a really interesting take what you're saying then about the steam arm. So
It's crazy.
It makes sense.
Super simple.
It makes sense because I have seen, as you know, I'm a big fan of the Racer.
Yeah.
The Café Racer. And I love the steam arms on it, and the fact that it's like multi-directional and is so easy to use on, off, etc., etc. But I have also seen novices go up to that machine. We've got one here, as you know. Yeah. They go up to it, they press it, and they literally jump.
It's like walking.
Like what has just happened? So I understand that. So when you've got on the entry level machines, when we're still looking at the more traditional style of a twisting a knob, it does make sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's we all know within the hospitality industry that staff turnover is a massive challenge.
It is.
The time for training is massively reduced.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can alleviate all of that with other technologies and bean-to-cup machines, all those kind of bits and pieces, but they do come at a significant cost.
Yeah.
And there is a whole life cycle of cost that then builds around that. And equally, depending on the environment that you want to create, it does or doesn't work for that particular environment. So you have to be really careful with how you select the machine for an environment or what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
There's some big chains that I've spoken to that have acknowledged, today bean-to-cup machine is absolutely right for our business, but they're still in the background kind of going, I can see us in 4 or 5 years being back in the traditional world, because we are hospitable beasts. We love to engage. We love to be social. We love to sit down and have a coffee and take time out from our day. I think we're all very aware that, coming through COVID, consumer habits and buying habits massively changed, and interacting with people was almost kind of frowned upon because of various consequences. Yeah. But I think that's only going to change and come back as we go through the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I think that's where we can really start to move. I've lost my train of thought now. Sorry. I had something back there.
We've got 2 cameras, so we can
we'll cut.
To cut.
That's cool.
Let's have another question.
We'll keep going. It's a podcast. We're not editing.
No, of course not. It's live.
Yeah. So like the opera with pressure profiling,
yes.
like we said, that was a bit of a proof of concept.
Yep.
Maybe, pressure profiling is still like on the fringe. So a lot of businesses actually aren't asking for that.
No.
So what are businesses asking for from their coffee equipment?
So it all comes down to simplicity.
Yeah.
Comes down to consistency, and the ability to replicate that consistency is the biggest piece. And how you can then get that from any barista that steps behind the machine that you've trained to achieve the same consistency is critical. So it is a bit of a chasing game when it comes to a traditional. You look at a traditional setup, and there's no denying it. I think we worked out, the number of variables you have in a traditional setup is huge.
Yeah. It is.
And it's how do you control those, and how do we reduce those in some respects, or how do we put measures in place to ensure that we get consistency on those.
Yeah.
So, this is where we've seen development in the traditional world a lot over the last couple of years, and almost catching up with other markets and other industries. Mm-hmm. So from a technical point of view, we need machines that are consistent both in temperature and consistent in their steam output. Mm-hmm. and consistent in their dosing and volumetrics. Because if we can do that, that's 3 variables removed already. And that's very simple to do with technology and using the right materials. That's something we've taken a huge focus on in our machines. So looking at the right quality of stainless steel to use, not just using stainless steel, but using the right quality that's going to help reduce scale, not reduce scale, but help the longevity of life of those boilers.
Manage scale.
Manage scale, because it's a really tricky one. I'd love to say that every machine out there is working with a filter that's not in date, and
sadly, that's not the case.
It's far from it. Far from it. So creating consistency through using the right tech and the right modern day materials is critical. So that's one element that we've worked really, really hard on. Consistency of flow and consistency of temperature is we've done a lot of work on over the years, and it really, again, depending on your quality of coffee, there can be a variance in that as well. Some coffees are more forgiving than other coffees in that world. So, and that again leans towards things like the Opera and the Café Racer and bits and pieces in our range. And then it's things like getting consistency of temperature within milk. So looking at auto steams, looking at temperature control when it comes to shut off and air introduction into those as well. They're all elements that we can bring to the table. And continuing to develop. It's quite a fast-paced development in that area at the moment. New tech coming out all the time. We're now seeing the re-emergence of this whole sort of connectivity between grinder and machine. It's come and gone a number of times over the last few years, and probably even more than that. I remember looking at link grinders over 10 years ago. And we still haven't managed to quite finesse that, but I think we're getting closer. It's still a bit of a tricky one when it comes to dealing with a fresh product like coffee. I think a lot of people forget that it's quite a fresh product and can go stale and go off and vary quite quickly, quite easily. But it's all about how we can mitigate all of these variables to try and create consistency behind the bar when someone's operating a traditional machine. So, from things like an automated tamper, that's one variable that, if we all use an automated tamper, we've all got consistency. We've all got the same grinder, we've all got consistency. We're all pushing the same button, we've got consistency. We're very quickly reducing a lot of these variables, but still delivering a crafted beverage to the consumer, which, people like that. They're into that. If that's what they want to spend their time doing, there's always going to be a market for, garage forecourt coffee, as I call it, going along, pushing a button. But there's also that other end of the market, which is still growing, to look at the traditional side of the market and how that sort of whole experience and theatre of a coffee shop exists. So
that point you said earlier about having the temperature readout on the group head, most people don't actually need to know that.
No.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
And
the average barista is never really going to touch that.
That's it. And I think, a lot of people over-spec the equipment they need for their coffee shop and probably spend more money than they should on aesthetics and what they think they need. But at the end of the day, we want to create machines that can be that stable, give, say, the roaster that control, but actually day to day, the baristas don't need to worry about that. And I put it very simply, like you take a racing car, you've got the engineer in the garage, tunes that car to the absolute nth degree, but all the racing driver has to do is kind of go out and in simple push the pedals and steer the wheel in a really simplistic way. But that's what we need people behind the bar to. They haven't got time to be standing there looking at temperature readouts or milliliters or...
They got to queue out the door.
Exactly.
They want to be able to quickly look at the machine and going, right, that was in 25 seconds or that was in 27 seconds. And they want to, it's got to be of that kind of sort of setup and that kind of readout. And it doesn't just go through the machine on the counter. The way your queue flows, the way that everything works in the cafe is essential to that. And I think one of my biggest bugbears in the coffee industry today, and I have to say Bridge aren't the victim of this, but one of my biggest bugbears in the coffee industry today is that when people are opening a cafe or when they're opening a coffee shop, they're inviting coffee roasters in to talk to them about their products. That roaster should be the expert in the room advising that coffee shop on how to make a successful business. And I think too many coffee companies and too many salespeople within the coffee industry, I'm probably going to upset some people here, are led by what the customer wants. And then they end up selling the consumer the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to remember that, we're a guest into their business, absolutely. But they've invited you into that business as an expert. So actually, let us advise you, be an advisor to your business to help your business succeed and grow. We never walk. You never walk into a sales opportunity to sell a machine in the hope that actually they're going to sell less coffee.
No.
You want them to sell more coffee.
Sure.
You want them to buy another machine or open a second shop or grow in the future. So why would you let them make a bad decision on day one?
Yeah.
And
It's
sell
about
them
being
the wrong machine.
It's about being that trusted advisor, isn't it? As
Exactly.
You say. Yeah.
Exactly. And it does take time to build that credibility and do it right. But I think if we spend a lot of time in the UK as Sanremo sharing features and benefits and talking about why a machine's right for a particular environment. And everyone goes, oh, well, how many cups a day? It's like, well, it's not about the cups per day. So let's talk about the quality of the coffee. Let's talk about your target market. Let's talk about your drink size. Let's talk about what's your busiest hour look like. You can have a coffee shop that sells 50 cups of coffee a day, but it's selling 50 cups of coffee in half an hour.
Exactly.
There's a certain machine you need for that versus one that's going to make one coffee every 10 minutes. If it's
completely different scenario. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of sort of missold information around what people need to spend on coffee machines.
There is.
And trying to get it right for the right person. I could put a coffee machine in front of my nan and she's going to completely go, well, what's this? Like, why do I need to know that? And it's pointless, and it's never going to be worthwhile in an environment of where my nan was going to drink a coffee. A single origin Colombian that's been through some funky wash process and then put in a barrel and fermented and then aged with in another whiskey barrel. All those kind of things. But you need a certain machine for that, and that's where the Opera comes into its own.
Yeah.
But if I was to put one of our entry-level machines, it would still make a great cup of coffee, but you're never going to maximise all that time and effort at the other end.
It's about the right machine for the right job.
Absolutely.
And I've often said over the years to countless amounts of clients that that is actually so much emphasis gets put on getting the right machine in, and then and we'll supply you a grinder as well.
Yeah.
And
drives me mad.
Yeah. So actually, that grinder is as important, if not more important, to what lands in the cup than the actual machine is.
Yeah. All a machine will do is show up any inconsistencies in a grinder.
Yeah.
You always, very simply, buy the best grinder you can.
Yeah.
Because if your grinder's not up to that level, your machine's never going to get above that. If you're grinding coffee at a level that's kind of here, and you've got a grinder that's inconsistent in dose and inconsistent in grind size, that machine can't pull it back up.
No.
It's only can pull it down.
Exactly.
If you're grinding at a high quality, the best you can do is maintain that with the quality of machine. You can't ever go above.
Yeah.
So you have to, investment in the best possible grinder for any business is always the way to
Exactly. On that note, why don't you talk to us about the X1, Stuart? Because
the X1.
That's quite a revolutionary product for Sanremo.
Absolutely.
Well, not just Sanremo. I would say the whole market.
Yeah. No, the X1 is a product that we've spent nearly 8 years developing.
8 years.
8 years. And we took exactly the same philosophy with the X1 as we did with the Opera. Again, if we took a blank sheet of paper, what could we do to create a grinder that does what the barista needs, does what the barista asks for, but looking at all of the technology and approach that we could. So what we've actually done with the X1 is taken 3 grinders and brought it into a single unit. Not an easy challenge, hence it took us nearly 8 years, but the appetite and the drive from the business to do that was definitely there. So what we've managed to create is a grinder that actually is the combined of pretty much 2 grind by weight espresso grinders, and a deli grinder, so like a shop grinder as well, that can literally grind for any type of coffee, any style of coffee, from espresso through to filter, through to V60, Chemex, whatever else you'd want to do through one grinder. And we've made it all electronically controlled. The burrs are actually what I call live burrs, so they're constantly moving, and they're managed by the system to deliver the consistency of the grind at any point. Also, we're weighing beans as opposed to weighing the grind in the portafilter.
Yep.
So a lot of issues we see around some grind by weight grinders is that the load cell is actually within where the portafilter is sitting in the grinder, and obviously it's very prone to a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
We've actually managed to hide the load cells and the weighing system up inside the grinder, away from any sort of user interaction. And then we've worked a lot of the time over the development to create a set of burrs with near zero retention and a really consistent grind size. So again, removing variability as much as we possibly can. So by doing that, we can create a system whereby we're pre-weighing coffee in a beans. So we're retaining freshness because we're not grinding the coffee. We're retaining all the flavor and aroma volatiles within that coffee. And then we're grinding it at a very consistent size. We're grinding it at a very consistent dose because of the quality of the load cells we're using in the top of the grinder. And then we're distributing it without any restriction or retention devices straight from the burrs into the portafilter. So at no point in our system have we got any ground coffee sitting in the grinder other than any little retention that's behind the burrs.
Yeah.
And we know that we've delivered on the low retention, and we can use different hoppers through a single set of through a single set of burrs because the science is there to back it up. And that was the one thing we said with the X1 when we developed it, is it's all good and well saying these things, but if the science can't back it up, then it's pointless. So we've backed it all up with science, backed it all up with a number of different processes around grind sizes, both 2D and 3D, through flavor profiles, and also testing different coffees through the retention of different flavor compounds that could be found. And it's really now come into a position where we've got this fantastic product. And I would say we're still today, even after it being launched just over a year now in the UK market.
So as long as that, is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're still finding additional benefits.
Yeah.
Right.
So prime example being, and I was just working the other day with someone, and we were looking at a layout for a new cafe scenario that they're working on, and we were suddenly going, oh, hang on a minute, if you've got 3 grinders, you've almost got additional steps when you're moving away from the machine as you're working behind the bar. Suddenly the X1 eradicates a step when you're working behind the bar.
Yeah.
And suddenly when you start working that through and kind of go, well, hang on a minute, a busy cafe doing 300-400 plus coffees a day, additional step behind the bar, time wasted and everything else, it suddenly comes into a significant benefit.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've really found as well is actually the reduction in coffee wastage, because we're not holding any ground coffee in the chambers or any point.
Yeah, you don't have to. It's the classic purging through once you change grind
No
size.
wastage.
Yeah,
Literally, it's great. So it's either in bean format or it's in the portafilter and dispensed.
Yeah.
So if you do make a grinder adjustment, you change the microns and the depth of the burrs, you've not got any purging, any wastage, and the speed of that process is massively improved. We did some case studies in Australia with some of our partners out there, and over the course of about a year, it was calculated that you'd save nearly €5,000 through reduced coffee wastage,
Right.
and reduced labour costs in dialing in coffee in the morning. And that's just literally dialing in coffee in the morning. That's nothing else. That's not through improved quality. That's not any of the other benefits that it brings in being able to switch over coffees and everything else. But the grinder literally pays for itself almost in 12 months because of the reduced wastage and reduced labour costs
Because of the dialing in every morning.
Yeah, because I know, and then once you get good at it, you can take a fresh coffee and you can almost give the grinder a recipe before you grind a bean, and like almost very, very quickly that's going to be that kind of recipe that suits that coffee. And within, I would say, less than 50 grams, normally you've got a coffee that's dialed in, ready to go, that you'd be happy to serve to a customer.
It is. We've got one here, as you know.
Yeah.
And it is, isn't it? And we've kind of fallen in love with it.
Yeah, most people do.
Really, yeah.
It does take a bit of getting used to.
It does.
And there is, and it is so different to
There's
other
a couple of
grinders.
engineers that are like, how do I?
And you'll always get that when
Yeah.
it's a completely different take on a grinder, isn't it? It's like it's gone back to the drawing board with the grinder.
Absolutely.
In essence, and the finished product, you can see it's taken 8 years to get there for a good reason. And I think it's a fantastic product. And as a roaster, there's multiple benefits. Just on a practical level here, we have different coffees all the time.
Absolutely. If you want to change coffees on it, it is one of the best
Yeah.
because you can literally save recipes in the background, recall them, and the grinder's dialed in. You know, if you've got a standard, what I call the old sort of collar grinder, then you know you're kind of guessing or moving it way back to where it was. Whereas,
Through necessity, going back a couple of weeks, I wanted to try a coffee as an espresso that had literally been roasted about half an hour before.
yeah,
Like no grinder likes doing that with a coffee that's like, but to be fair, it did the best job that I've ever seen a grinder doing on a coffee that's that fresh. I mean, it's not, we're not doing the coffee any favors, don't get me wrong. But you could get an extraction that was acceptable out of it, which was impressive.
one thing we really found with a lot of development, and again we're kind of going into the real sort of high end, but actually through the burr set we've developed, we've removed all the fixing holes from it actually on the cutting disc, so it's a clean cutting disc of which gives us real consistency in the grind size. But what that really does as well is deliver a lot of clarity in the cup, so the sort of clean taste that comes through in the espresso is really highlighted. And then you've got the ability, you know, to start adjusting things within the grinder of grind speed and everything else, which can then sort of dial up the nature of a recipe to make a coffee more suited to a milk-based drink or a straight espresso. So, it gives a lot of opportunity for a barista to really dial in a coffee, and also it gives them an opportunity to really make a coffee shine and give off its best.
It really does, and there's those that are at the top end of the coffee market will love it for its ability to pretty much do anything with it from a grinder perspective, but. As well as that, I feel like it's got a really good position in the market in like mainstream coffee. And I know, like, you look at it as a standalone product versus other products in the market, and you think, well, it appears to be expensive.
Yep.
But then it is kind of three grinders in one. You look at it like that, and it's no longer that expensive.
No.
But aside of that, it's got so many benefits for someone who is doing. I mean, we have cafes that are doing 600, 700, 800 coffees a day.
Yep.
When you've got a high volume cafe and you've got a house espresso and a decaf, or a house espresso and a single origin, there's so many benefits that grinder brings that is not just being able to geek around with it. And I think it's important for the market to know that.
Absolutely, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. So we've just done some software updates on the X1.
Yeah.
And one of those software updates, again, is going back. We've removed some of the information on the front of the screen.
Okay.
So again, it makes it less sort of
intimidating,
and more user friendly.
Yeah.
So again, it's we've got all the control in the background, but we can lock it down, and just so the barista literally just has to push a button.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of our.
But that controllability is still there.
It's still there. Yeah. Again, it's like, you know, the roaster's got all that control,
and
the roaster can do all that information that they want to do. But again, user behind the bar, it's doing everything it needs to do from a consistency and an operational point of view. So, it's a fascinating grind, and it kind of takes you into another route as well, because you could actually take, going to the full extremes, you could take the Opera. You could take the X1, you could take any coffee, and I can actually make that coffee then probably taste, 8, 10, 9, 12 different ways. Because that's the control that those machines give me. That, again, we can then allow to fix things and do things to different roasting profiles and everything else. So actually, yes, machines are expensive, but I don't need to go and spend huge amounts on a single origin rare coffee. I can make that coffee do all these bits and pieces on these machines.
I see a lot of similarities in the way that the X1 was brought to market with the way that the Opera was brought to market.
Yeah.
Not that I was around at that time. But is the X1 a bit of a proof of concept as well as the Opera was?
Absolutely. We've really shot for the stars again. And we have this mentality and strap line kind of to the business that still gets used, and I wish it would come back in more, is called the Brave Inspire.
Yeah.
And for me, that really encompasses where we are and what we do as a business. We are the young pretender, as I said earlier. We are only 30 years old compared to hundreds of years of history in other manufacturers, and we have the opportunity to kind of be a bit disruptive, bring a lot of passion to the table, Carlo, our CEO, is probably one of the most passionate people in the coffee industry I think I've ever met, and I think he's got a goal and a view that he wants to be on the top of the mountain and really striving for absolute control of the market in a good way because of the machines that he's created and designed with our teams in Italy. And we continue to do that. We did it with the Opera, say, 12 years ago. We've done that now with the X1, and we believe that product will continue to be developed as it is at the moment. But yeah, who knows where that might take us? We've only been on the journey. We've only been on the journey with this grinder in the market for just over 12 months. As I said, it still excites us to see where it can be applied, and then whether it's X2, X3, X4 in the years down the line, or whatever else,
where that goes,
where that goes, cool. Let's see. But I think again, we've got to listen to the market, respond to what the market's needing.
Well, I think Sanremo's definitely positioned itself as a market disruptor.
Yeah,
and it is disrupting the market. No one is going to deny that.
Good.
I don't think. I'm certainly not. I think there's, going back to what I was saying earlier, that the market has been crowded. There's you look at a traditional espresso machine. I can probably pretty much rattle off 15 to 20 names straight away that all of them are going to be do a good job.
Yeah.
But for Sanremo to come in and change things, not just in terms of it's great to hear about the consistency in the cup and all that kind of stuff. This is stuff we preach to our customers about all the time. It's one thing that we feel very passionate about from a coffee roasting perspective, is getting that, amping up that quality, then keeping it consistent. And it's one of the industry's biggest problems. So to have a machine manufacturer that also has that same sort of core reason for being, if you like, I feel is really important to me. Aesthetically, Sanremo machines are kind of out there, aren't they?
100%. 100%.
And I like that too.
Yeah, I think it's probably perhaps some point to our detriment in the past. I think people have thought it's been form over function, but absolutely not. I think that's one of the things that we've taken the right materials. We've looked at what we should be using. We've looked at all the componentry to ensure we created the best machine, but then combined it with the design. For me, that's a great part. The amount of customization we can offer as a business, and the way that our production lines work at our factory in Treviso. No two machines coming down the line have to be the same. No. And that for me is fantastic. It gives us the ability to be very reactive to customers' needs and demand. And the team out in Treviso have done a phenomenal job. It's much almost like a car production line. With your optional extras, machines come down the line and they've got different codings and different parts go on. And no two machines need to be the same, which is fascinating.
And customization. I mean, you mentioned it. Everything is getting more customizable, isn't it? We're not just in the coffee industry, but everything in life is now more customizable.
Let's talk about the Balmoral Café Racer.
So we were very fortunate to get approached by one of our partners up in Scotland, and they said, what could you do? And I just literally fired at our designer in Italy and said, look, this is the palette, this is the logo, what would you come up with? And they knocked it out of the park. We sent over the designs. Was it two or three designs over, all with little tweaks on, and literally they fell in love with them.
And that has actually interestingly led to
conversations
conversations
with you guys on other
some
things.
Of our similar style clients. Should we say?
Absolutely. And that's just the tip of what we can do as such. And
and people love it, don't they? People love to see their brand on something. And if they're spending, a good quality espresso machine, whatever brand, is a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is an investment. To be able to make that really yours, so there's no other one like it on the market, I think is key. Is important to people.
We talk about consistency and quality. One of the things I do with sales teams when they come into our showroom in London is we look at temperature and why temperature is important. Everyone talks about temperature, but actually what does it do?
Yeah.
And with the control we have on some of the Opera and the Café Racer, we can change the temperatures very quickly and very easily. And actually we taste the different temperatures. And suddenly you understand why temperature consistency is important through that exercise. So actually what we're creating is almost like kind of a scientific level, scientific style of instrument that's really consistent to 0.1, 0.2 of a degree, but can take a pounding. That's not cheap to produce.
No, it's not.
You know, if you asked, a lot of people in that world, kind of, we want something that's really stable and really consistent, but it's got to take a pounding from 6 different baristas working on it for 7 days a week and never has any downtime. It's quite an ask.
Yeah, it is.
So we machines aren't cheap for those very reasons.
You get it's the same with anything in life. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are cheaper versions out there. Yeah. We don't sell them. We don't sell them for a very good reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they're not worth it.
No, and it goes back to the very simple analogy: you buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Espresso machines are very much that. You'll find, on our machines, it's not something that people recognise readily, but from a sustainability point of view, all the materials on our machine are designed to last the lifetime of that machine.
Yeah.
There's very few machines on ours that have plastic exteriors or, you look at even our Zoe, the entry-level machine, every panel on that machine is stainless steel.
Yeah.
There's no plastic panels that are going to warp or crack in 2-3 years' time. Everything on that machine is built to last the full life cycle of that machine.
It's the difference between price and value, isn't it? Ultimately.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Talking about that, the most recent addition to your lineup is the D8, which for us fits like a really nice sort of segment of product category.
Yeah.
What's the reaction been to the D8?
Reaction to the D8 has been phenomenal. We again did similar to that we do with all of our products. We took a blank sheet of paper and said, what does the market demand, or what's the market looking for today? And it came down to 4 key elements. One was we needed a machine that was easy to operate, easy to train, easy to use for all the reasons we've been saying about high staff turnover in the hospitality industry and availability and everything else. We wanted to create a machine that was easy to work on, easy to fix, easy to maintain, and ensure that there was commonality of parts across the range and accessibility to those parts. We wanted to create a machine that was for the roasters as well, so that we can deliver that level of control for roasters to allow their customers to make the coffee they want them to make. And then thirdly, we wanted to create a machine that would, fourthly even, we wanted to create a machine that would deliver on volume and could be put across multiple locations and multiple units to deliver consistency across groups and chains and larger pieces. So that was what led us to the D8. The key thing about all of that is we wanted to maintain an entry-level price point. So we had to completely go back to the drawing board around how we actually manufactured a machine, what technology we could bring to the table at this price point, and what consistency and what trade-offs we were looking at along that point as well. So we designed a machine with a very new approach, both from a chassis point of view. The chassis is like no other chassis in our range. It's actually modular, so it can be controlled. And very simple things like that then brings to the table. So if we're building chassis and shipping them around the world, you can only get so many on a pallet, for example. If we're building modular chassis in panels, you can get a lot more on a pallet and ship a lot more things. But equally, because the chassis is then modular, should anything need to be changed down the year, you can actually just change elements to the chassis. So we reduced a huge amount of cost in manufacturing processes and everything else in the background. We managed to bring a stainless steel boiler to an entry-level machine through our new hydraulic system, which allows us to then deliver temperature stability, so we're satisfying the roasters with the stability of the temperature. We've created improved steam on an entry-level machine because of the stainless steel boiler. One of the great benefits of stainless steel is you can actually run higher pressures inside a stainless steel boiler. That allows us to create better steam. Historically, on an entry-level machine, you push a steam boiler hotter, group head temperatures go through the roof and you lose quality of coffee. But we've developed a new hydraulic system on the D8, which then stabilizes the group head temperature as it's dispensed. So it gives the roasters the control. It gives the staff the control through the level of information that we're displaying on the machine. As I said earlier, we can dial up or dial down the information that's being shown. We've then got a commonality of parts across machines in our range, and equally some new parts which have come in that are readily available in the market as well. And then the fourth part that's been, on the Opera for nearly 12 years is we've developed a brand new telemetry system that's on the machine.
Yeah.
Now this is something that's been on other machines, certainly the bean to cup world for many, many a time, but it hasn't been something that's really translated well into the traditional environment. So the easiest way to describe it is we've created it in 3 ways. One, it's pretty much a live mystery shopper on the machine. So it's live all the time. It tracks every shot, tracks every process, tracks every button push, tracks every extraction time. Secondly, it looks at, from an engineering point of view, it looks at all of the components within the machine. So it can tell you what every probe is reading, tell you if that probe is working, if that probe's not working. And then from a fleet point of view, you can then look at it and go, right, this machine's working hard, this machine's not working, this machine needs to be a 2-group, this machine needs to be a 3-group, this location's busy, this location's not busy. You can almost then start to use it as a tool to make business decisions from. So that's all the information that comes out of it. The plus side then is we've actually designed the machine so that we can actually push data to it as well.
Okay.
So remotely, an engineer can dial into a machine, reset volumetrics, reset temperatures, look at what probe has failed. So you've got some telemetry systems out there at the moment, but generally sort of bolt-ons, third parties to flow meters and bits and pieces. Yeah. This system's actually built fundamentally into the board of the machine.
Intrinsically part of the machine.
So one piece of technology we developed a number of years ago was 24-volt electronic systems, which we first showcased on the F18. And we've now carried that through our range. So we've now because we're running this lower voltage system, the ability to access what the machine's up to and what the machine's doing within it, we can then pull that information out remotely to share that on a cloud anywhere in the world and play with it. So we now actually have a number of our machines online. So not only the Opera, from a consumer point of view, the Cube and the U are both app controlled and in the cloud. The D8 will then be available pretty much from September with the telemetry on it.
I think that would be like really big for a lot of our customers. Multiple site locations.
It does
being
a lot
able to have that sort of insight.
Absolutely, it does a lot of really cool things.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of our customers the other day, and they were saying how they're starting to actually KPI their baristas on extraction achievement.
Right.
So because of the telemetry, you can actually see how many shots during that day were within a tolerance.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And that is important because you've got at the top end of the sort of the specialty coffee shops out there, you have got a barista who's taking enough care to care about that.
Yeah.
Aren't you? And their shots are always going to be perfect. They'll probably throw it away if it's not perfect, or whatever. But like in terms of sort of mass market coffee, we all see, anyone in the coffee industry will see, you'll go into a cafe, even some of the big chains, and you'll see a shot that is just simply not poured like it should be.
Yeah.
We've all seen it.
We've all seen it.
Time and time again.
But the worst thing about that is we've all accepted it as well.
I know, exactly. You don't complain, or not always anyway. But being able to see that and see a trend as well. I mean, there's always going to be the odd bad one, but if you can see, like, you got a particular barista on shift who's always under extracting, or you can it just gives you the ability to make decisions based on data, doesn't it? Rather than
Yeah, and I know we're all getting more and more data hungry. I think some people worry it's there to catch us out, but I think at the same time it's there for us to improve.
Well, it's authenticity, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think one of the big things that we've really pushed a lot on is transparency.
Yeah.
You know, even just from a customer relationship point of view at Sanremo, we know if something's going wrong or something's not working, let's be transparent about it. Let's be honest about it. And equally that goes through from everything that we do with our customers, because I'm a great believer in you're going to get found out at some point. And it was funny, I was having a conversation just with someone this morning, and they were saying that they went for a job interview at a large cafe chain. They didn't name the chain, but literally they were offering a flat white and a small latte were exactly the same thing.
Really?
And he was...
Are they not the same thing?
Wow, yeah. We had the big debate. And he was kind of like, but you're kind of not justifying that. You know, why is that 370 and why is that 340? You know, you've got it 2 different menu items. You're saving exactly the same drinks. Oh, the consumer doesn't know.
Yeah.
But that consumer will go to another coffee shop and someone will be transparent.
Someone will tell them that.
And say, and they kind of go, well, that guy over there, it's just like the credibility of that coffee shop's fallen out.
Yeah.
Menu pricing is a whole nother topic.
£5 a cappuccino, it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get you back for episode 2.
Don't. There's, we could go into all sorts of rabbit holes, but it's really interesting. And again, perception is a massive one. And I always remember years ago, and I still use it today. James Hoffman did a podcast many years ago, or it was maybe even a talk, and he was talking about the fact that I think at the time you could go into McDonald's for 99p and get a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
You could equally go into Byron and get a cheeseburger for £15. You were happy with both.
Yeah.
But what's the difference?
Yeah.
It's kind of that perception of value and everything else.
Exactly.
Coffee's very similar.
Yeah.
I think it's
Different
the experience.
products for different times.
Yeah, it's the experience, it's the environment, and hence there's a place for every style of coffee.
Exactly.
I'm not going to say everything's got to be traditional, but
No.
most of it should be.
Well, talking about that and
Yep.
going back to sort of giving people the sort of technology that they're looking for and telemetry for businesses and that kind of thing. From our perspective, where we sit, I think it's fair to say that automation is definitely on the rise in a big way. Whether it's like fully automated machines or just automatic milk steamers and tampers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you see Sanremo sort of embracing that a bit more? What kind of technologies are you looking towards? Are there anything you guys are afraid of that might be down the line?
No, I think you've got to embrace it, because if you don't, then you're going to fall behind and get left behind. So we've evaluated a lot of it. We're constantly looking at ways to make processes simpler and automated to a point. We've spoken about automated steam arms. They're a constant field of development for us, and we're very fortunate. We've got a very, very active R&D team. Linked grinders and sync grinders and all those kind of bits and pieces continue to develop. The biggest challenge with all of this is there is a level of human interaction at any stage of all of these processes. Yeah. So if you've got some interaction, or people are working in different ways, then how does the technology ensure it knows that? And when you add the human element in, it's quite difficult in some respects. So we're constantly looking at how do we remove the variable, how do we bring the consistency in. So a simple one like flushing the group head after making a shot. So we introduced some technology on the FA team where it comes up with a flush reminder on the group head after you push the button. So you have to push a flush before you make the next shot. Mm-hmm. There's other machines that have gone about that doing automated. And it's like, how do we bring some of the better practices to an automation point of view?
And that's going to help with the staff turnover.
Well, that's it, and it reduces training need, it reduces cost, and everything else. So it's all about how can we automate processes, and it's marginal gains. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's no
silver bullet.
No, there's no silver bullet out there at the moment to do that. I mean, we have enough issue with people going, I'm using 6 different milks, or
even if the milk has not been in the fridge.
That's it. Yeah. There is so many things to put to play, and it's just trying to make sure we can teach best practice. And I think in some respects we almost need to go back to basics in some environments, just to realise we do what we don't. We know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And really sort of look at it from that approach. And I always remember many years ago writing a specification for a machine, and some sales guys had written us a whole brief about a machine. And it's like, it's got temperature and it can push this, and it can take this many grams of coffee in the chamber, and this, that, and the other. And it was a bean to cup machine at the time. And I said, "You've forgotten something." I was like, "You forgot." I haven't even told the customer it's got 2 hoppers. Like, how fundamental is that from a consumer point of view? It's a really important factor. But we got so lost.
You're so wrapped up in something.
In the finer detail.
Yeah.
That actually, I think sometimes we all need to step back and kind of go, well, actually, what is right for this business? It kind of goes back to that.
What's important to the customer?
What's important to the customer, and what's the solution that they need?
Yeah.
Is critical. So, lots to play for. But I think we just need to step back a bit and kind of not reset, but just take a fresh pair of eyes and see what we need for the future, and what is really needed in the market. I think there's a lot of tech out there that's nice to have.
Is there anything coming down the line with Sanremo?
We've got a couple of projects on the go at the moment. We generally work in sort of two-year cycles, so we're working towards a few things for Host 2025.
Okay, cool.
Which is a couple of updates and potentially a new edition. But I think we've got a lot on our plate with the D8 at the moment, and the D8 Pro, which is literally just arrived in the country this week. Cool. I think we'll continue to develop that platform format, optional extras, and sort of allowing people to build a machine that they need for their business, so they're not paying for the bits they don't want.
Okay.
But can have the bits they do want. So, which has been a really interesting approach, and one that's been met with so far with really, really good feedback.
Yeah, sounds exciting.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Is that enough waffle?
I think that was good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Cool.